You might actually be right. Twice in just this division alone, right? Minnesota sit in third place with 5 points, uh, 5 points ahead of Arizona. St. Louis are actually 5 points out of a playoff spot. Right now, Arizona has 43 points in that fourth spot, and San Jose behind St. Louis also has 38 points. It's starting to look a little interesting because they're playing their own division the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 5 points doesn't actually mean a whole lot, um, but it could be a very interesting race for the rest of the season for that fourth spot.
So two disclaimers beforehand.
Yeah.
Number one, thanks again. Yes, I like that I had two great predictions for this division. And second, I know because Adam is gonna mention this either to us personally or on the next episode. I was 2 out of 3 in this division. I said Anaheim was gonna make the playoffs. I know that was
That's
a
fine.
horrible prediction, but I'm okay. I'm happy for the Wild. I'm happy that they're surging. I love that I get to cover them this year and just really, have a more I guess critical lens on what's going on within the organization. But I guess yeah, too for St. Louis, like you kind of have to feel for them where, and as what we mentioned before, where there's that cloud of the championship, that championship run that you have the established core and you're gonna just try to run it back, and it just hasn't really been there. That And I'm not saying that this is indicative of what's been going on, but those Jordan Bimington outbursts that have have I think represented more of this season than I thought they would be. Of just that frustration, of just that, they're not getting killed every game, but it's not looking like the same championship team we saw.
Right. So, who do you think finishes in that fourth spot in the West?
And it's crazy that every year we talk about this, or they were in our off season. I personally believe they dominated our off season stories, not for the good reasons,
For
but
all the wrong reasons.
for all the wrong reasons. That Arizona might pull it off, that they might be able to do something. And, this might be something that is just, again, a streak they're having, and Blues are just having a bad streak right now, the last 10 games. But they've been pretty solid, that like they've been able to kind of get something out of there. And when you think about those two goalies they have right now, I just don't think, like, if you are where you are right now, like, would you trade an Antti Rotna at this point?
Uh well, it depends. How much trust do you have in? I think Aiden Hill is their third string goalie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you trust him moving forward to be your backup? I've heard great things about him. If that's the case, like remember they don't have many draft pick like
On their own
top
fault.
draft. They don't like for their own fault. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Like it's their fault they're in that situation for the most part, right? They don't have a first because it was taken away. Their third, I believe, was part of they traded away in the Taylor Hall. They got a second. How did they get it? Oh, for Derek Stepan. Remember, they got a second for
Mm-hmm.
that
Somehow.
somehow. But again, like they're still without a first. And, maybe that doesn't matter as much this year because a lot of prospects aren't playing, the OHL especially. But I still think they wouldn't mind having a first round pick. I think most teams wouldn't.
Yeah.
Do you get that from Antti Ranta or do you get more uh, other pieces? Is a separate discussion, but I don't see why not. They don't try to
Yeah.
trade.
Again, I would think of a Carolina situation where they'll give up something substantial
Right.
to Arizona, because it's not going to hurt them in the long run. Also, they
Right.
gave away a first round pick for Brady Shea. Not saying he's a bad player, but like, you didn't really have to like. It's just funny. You say you signed Jake Gardner, you have all these other defensemen, and then you also trade a first round pick for another defenseman, which is funny.
Yeah, and apparently they're still looking for another defenseman.
Yeah.
Like they called about Travis Hamonic a few weeks ago. I remember hearing. I think Friedman reported it, and it's like, why? Like you literally have the
They can't help themselves.
deepest defense core probably in the league, and whatever. I don't know. Weird,
Yeah.
weird situation. But I guess sticking with the West, last night the Blues. They said on Insider Trading that the Blues would be willing to move UFAs. Um, the two that LeBron pointed out was Hoffman and Bozak.
Hmm.
And let's remember that Doug Armstrong is not afraid to trade his UFAs, even if they're slightly out of a playoff spot, right? Kevin Shattenkirk, he traded to Washington. Paul Stastny, he traded to Winnipeg. So he's not afraid to do that. What do you think is the right move for the Blues? Is this the way to go?
Um, to be honest, I think so. I think trading away your UFAs for now and getting some assets back would actually be helpful for them because again, I know it's weird patting myself on the back, but I kind of looked at this not as a drain on talent where I'm like, losing Alex Petrangelo, it was gonna hurt them regardless of who were they gonna replace him with. And I
Right.
think that it just that leadership aspect of what happened there was a big drain on it because Ryan O'Reilly is a perfectly capable captain, I think. But to really lose a guy who was like a cornerstone guy, where he was your voice in the locker room, where he was someone that has been through, some pretty bad years in St. Louis and was there when they won it all. And to kind of lose him in like really an odd situation there. And just adding these other guys where I think, listen, you got what you got for them, but like Torrey Krug is still going to be a great player, but he's not Alex Petrangelo. Or if you're looking back on the other lines, like, Justin Falk, was he really worth that price? Was he really worth getting, trading a Joel Edmondson, a Dominic Bach for him? Was he someone that you could see yourself committing to long term, which they did commit to long term? And again, with the scoring as well, where it's just been a bit lethargic there, where when you keep these guys, are you just gonna go for the immediate run, or are you gonna you're gonna try to go and try to see where things go? Because I know that the Tarasenko talk, where it's that whole thing where he's gonna come back and he is gonna be someone that could potentially help them. But listen, like, this is a guy where he's not gonna like lead the offense again. Not for now, because of how long he's missed, of how long he's been dealing with these injuries, where the Blues are just they're not in a good situation to think about like going for it. And Jordan Bamington, like, again, like, I feel like my confidence is like gradually just kind of slides for him despite the extension he was given.
I'm all on board with trading your UFAs if you don't think you have a chance to make the playoffs. Because like I think we've seen from this roster, yes, I know they're missing Alex Petrangelo, but we've seen from this roster that they came from the bottom. Um, they've been through adversity. So and it's the playoffs. Who know, like, literally, we have no idea what could happen. Last season, we
Mhm.
literally saw Thatcher Demko just kind of not, we knew he had the ability, but it kind of took form in the bubble.
Mhm.
Um, I guess yes. Then if Doug Armstrong believes that this team is not making the playoffs, yeah, go right ahead. You could probably fetch something nice for Mike Hoffman, get a little bit for Tyler Bozak. Like, I don't think those two guys would necessarily come back specifically. One guy who's a UFA who they didn't bring up last night, and I was wondering if maybe they're considering keeping him, is Jaden Schwartz. And I know he does have a modified no trade clause, but at least exploring that option, what would you do?
Yeah, I it's really weird because I like the player himself, but the fact that he has a modified no trade clause and he has that injury history, it's certainly something that I think teams are going to think about because, like, the Blues they're in a bind where they could kind of keep a guy and kind of expect him to still be like a solid cog for them, but at the same time, it's a reality too. Just is it time to kind of let go of him? He's gonna be 29. He's 29, I believe now, right? And it was an injury after another injury where it's someone where I wouldn't feel comfortable always being in the top six at this point, at least.
Well, they also have some guys they do have to hand out some money to, and there's probably a couple guys here are going to get some raises. And Zach Sanford, Robert Thomas, Jordan Cairo, Ivan Barbashev, and Vince Dunn. Those are 4 RFAs right there that do have to get new contracts this off season, and they have $18 million in cap space. Plus, are you really going to continue with Ville Husso as your backup next year?
Yeah.
I would, if you're a competitive team or you want to be, I'd say no.
It's like, yeah, it's just again, they're in a bind. I think maybe they can make that run because I look at this team and it's funny. Before coming into this episode, I was gonna mention San Jose, but then they lost 5-1 to Anaheim. And I was just like, okay, I thought they were getting somewhere, but they're not out of it per se. But it is interesting with the West where I think it's gonna be a division. I think this is gonna be the division we're gonna look at maybe up until the last week of the season to just kind of see who wins. I think, and this is my prediction. I don't know if it's gonna come true, but I think there's gonna be a tie at 4th place between two teams, and they're gonna go for they're gonna look for all the tiebreakers there to see okay,
Wow.